So picture this, you go home after work or after school and then you feel the urge to create a nice healthy meal because you want to be healthy, and then you finish the meal and then you think to yourself, I'm not that satisfied at the moment. I feel like I can just have a little bit of something. I know I should be heading to the bananas and apples and oranges and fruits as a dessert, but for some reason I want to feel that satisfaction, that little hole with chocolates, crisps and brownies. Why do we always get those cravings for just the cookies, chocolates, cakes and brownies instead of bananas when we don't feel full after eating a main meal? So in this episode I'm going to explain 3 reasons why. So hi, my name is Jonathan. I'm a dietitian that supports people who are struggling with binge eating. And let's start with number 1. It's quite obvious, but the reason why you're not really full after eating is because you're not eating enough. We often think that the feeling of fullness means we're eating enough. But the thing is, we can volume eat, we can eat tons of broccoli, and we could still be in a caloric deficit. So if your body's craving food all the time after a main meal, then you probably just haven't eaten enough. Your body is still like asking out for food. It still needs food to go on. And if it hasn't eaten much food or hasn't triggered much satiety cues, fullness cues, then it's going to still ramp up your hunger hormones. So it really wants to eat right before bed. So that's why we always get those cravings late at night, because our body doesn't want to go 8 hours without anything substantial. So let's talk about the Minnesota starvation experiment in the 1940s. So what this experiment did is to conduct tests on what would happen if you underate for a really long time. So they conducted tests on people who normally ate 3,000 calories. Men, remember 3,000 calories, these soldiers back then in the 1940s, they didn't have like computers or games, so 3,000 calories. They're often very, very fit, always on the move, always walking to places. I don't think cars were a big hit back then. Correct me if I'm wrong about that. But in the 1940s, they had a baseline maintenance of 3,000 calories. And then the scientists, they wanted to test what would happen if I half those calories to 1,500 calories for many weeks. I think it was around 24 weeks. So what happened after these soldiers were underfed or eating only half of their calorie requirements, 1,500 calories, for a very long period of time? They started to get hangry, which is hungry and angry, if you don't know what that is. They started to have really negative emotions, depressive symptoms, anxiety, food thoughts, eating foods out of trash cans. They started to binge eat whenever they'd see any food. Whenever they're just eating food, they would even like stab themselves with a fork and they wouldn't feel anything. The scientists tested their pain perception and then it was massively reduced. They're watching TV, for example, and their brains wouldn't even light up unless food just came up in the screen. Like for example, during a dating scene, these two lovers in a movie, that's when their food would light up, not during like kissing scenes and all those kinds of things. So it's really interesting how underfeeding for a long period of time can affect our mental status, but also our physical status. We'd start to go crazy over food. So that was the Minnesota starvation experiment in the 1940s, and you couldn't find any other starvation experiment since then because it's quite unethical to starve people without telling them for a long period of time. I'm pretty sure they probably noticed it because they lost lots of weight and lost lots of muscle. But yeah, I don't think there have been any more recent studies. What the reason why they're doing that is to find the best way to refeed prisoners of war safely, because they had like lots of biochemical abnormalities during refeeding periods. They're also at risk of what's called refeeding syndrome, which many doctors and dietitians know about, where if you don't eat a lot of food and then you introduce a large amount of food, it can cause some biochemical abnormalities. Another thing to look at is maybe you're in too large of a caloric deficit, or maybe you're even skipping meals. So let's say your maintenance is 2,500 calories. If you're only eating 1,000 calories or 1,500, then your body is going to signal, let's ramp up those hunger cues. Let's try to over increase our hunger cues. So ghrelin, which is a hunger hormone, can be over increased when our body senses malnutrition, and leptin, which is the opposite, which is the fullness hormone, will actually massively decrease. So if we skip meals for a long period of time and undereat in a caloric deficit, then we're going to want to even more calories. For some reason, you might feel very compelled mentally, like, oh, why am I just craving takeaway? Why am I craving cookies? Because one of the many reasons why is because it's easy to eat lots of chocolates, it's easy to eat lots of crisps. So your body knows that. Your body understands that it's very easy calories to get in. So let's just eat all of that. Let's not be in a caloric deficit. Our body doesn't want to be in a caloric deficit as much as possible. It wants to be in at least maintenance or surplus. So being in a very large deficit can also happen very easily if you're over obsessing about protein, and you're not focusing on balanced meals. So how can we eliminate the craving very often in the evenings after meals most of the time? So to eat enough, you need to have breakfast, lunch and dinner with snacks in between. And you might be thinking, oh Jonathan, that's tons of food. Well, actually it's not, because if you're obsessing over food, you're constantly binging and restricting, what I tell my clients, then you have this thing called portion distortion. You're either feast or famine. You don't really know what a normal, comfortable plate looks like. So try to explore around that. Try to be 8 out of 10 full, but make sure all of your meals should contain protein, fats, carbs, and fiber. So instead of having like black coffee for breakfast and a vinegar salad for lunch, it's no surprise that you'll have a massive binge eating episode in the evening most of the time, or massive cravings at least. So try to have like a breakfast which is quite nourishing. So like oatmeal, that's carbs, seeds, that's a bit of fats or peanut butter, and then protein, maybe some Greek yogurt you can add to that, or protein powder, and then fiber. Well, it's already, there's fiber in the seeds and the oatmeal already, or unless you want to add like a banana to it. So make sure the meals are nutritionally balanced and you're eating regular meals, and then I can guarantee you'll see a reduction in cravings. So now moving on to the second reason why you're always craving food after a main meal. Even though you eat regular meals, let's say you're eating regular meals, you're even eating a maintenance, you're not even in a deficit. The reason why is because you're eating for a psychological craving. Maybe you're not eating for a physical craving, because we can be mechanically full, which means there's food in our stomach, our body senses an expansion in our stomach which signals fullness, but our minds might not be satisfied. There's a difference between being full and being satisfied. We need to be full and satisfied. It's easy. When I was in the gym, when I started going to the gym, everyone in bodybuilding.com was talking about eat chicken, broccoli and rice, and I ate that, but I was really full because I easily binge ate most evenings, or went to the crisps, cookies and brownies very easily because it's quite bland, and I thought I just had to eat that just because it would help with my gains. No one told me you can actually enjoy your meals, make them more delicious, and still contribute to gaining muscle or losing weight and all those kinds of things. So try to make sure your meals are enjoyable. So two things you can do to make your meals enjoyable. You can add sauces, add fats, add oils, because trust me, no one actually wants to eat plain old chicken breast and the only seasoning you have is salt and pepper. I see so many people do that, and for some reason I'm really confused. If you really want to enjoy your meals and make them enjoyable, let's try not to lie to ourselves. Let's add butter, let's add oil, let's add teriyaki sauce. Let's make it really delicious. You can add butter, teriyaki sauce, for example, which I really like, to my veggies. You can make garlic fried rice, which I really enjoy. It makes all of my meals really delicious. But let's say in this case that you've eaten your delicious meal but you still have a craving. Here, this is where it's important to introduce a sweet dessert, or a dessert you actually love. What I say is try not to go for chocolates, cookies, cakes and brownies, for example. The sweets in between meals, try to have it as a dessert first, because when you have it in between meals, you're maybe a 5 out of 10 hungry in the hunger scale, 10 out of 10 being extremely full, but let's say you're 5 out of 10 in snacks. It's easy to eat tons of chocolate, but after a main meal, when you're probably like 8 out of 10 full, then you have a 1 piece of chocolate, 2 pieces of chocolate, you're much less likely to overeat. You're just gonna stop there. If you do overeat, I want you to look, am I under eating calories throughout the day? Have I been restricting throughout the day? So remember, there's a difference between being full and satisfied, because if you're over restricting, like no sugar, no chocolate, no peanut butter for example, then you're gonna want to crave it more, because there's this phenomenon in science called the forbidden fruit theory, where we want more, or we crave more of what we try to restrict from ourselves. It can apply to almost anything, so gambling, food, gaming, all those kinds of things. So try to be full and satisfied. So now the third and final reason why you're never full is because you're eating for dopamine. You're not eating for fullness, you're not eating for a psychological craving like cookies, but you're trying to top yourself up of dopamine because probably you've been mentally burnt out. It's something to look into, like am I feeling really burnt out? Am I feeling quite depressed? Do I have low motivation to go to the gym? Do I have low motivation to go to work? Do I have low motivation to eat healthy? Then those are signs that you feel burnt out. So when I was in university, I was studying to become a dietitian. I was the chronic people pleaser. I was always saying yes to everything, because when you're new and in university, you want to make a good first impression. You don't want other people to hate you. And what I learned from that is I just essentially burnt out really quickly. I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to go to the gym, eat healthy. So that was when my binge eating started. I was mentally burnt out. I was feeling really stressed, and then I had like university, I had so many things. So how can we avoid this stress? Well, the thing is, we can't avoid stress, but we can reduce the impact stress has on us by making us mentally stronger. And I'm not talking about like SAS training or SWAT training. That's not my definition of being mentally stronger. So I came across this by Dr. K in YouTube on how to process stress and how to eliminate the stress as much as possible, reduce its effects on you so you're not really affected mentally, emotionally, even physically by it. So step 1 to build mental resilience and reduce the effects of stress on you. First of all, notice what physical sensations am I feeling from whatever emotion I'm feeling. Am I feeling a tightness in my chest? Am I feeling a pitting effect on my stomach? Am I just feeling like any shakiness going on? Try to notice any physical sensations. Because of the digital age, we can't even recognize what emotions we're feeling. When people ask me, Jonathan, how are you feeling? I used to say, I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling stressed, oh, it sucks, I'm feeling down. Those are not emotions. So that leads us to step number 2, which is try to recognize what emotions you're feeling. I'm gonna put in the top here of the screen the emotional color wheel. So try to find what emotion are you actually feeling. You can see there's no I'm stressed feeling in this color wheel. See what's a deeper emotion. Try to find out what you're feeling right now. And what's amazing about that is simply just recognizing what emotion you're feeling can massively reduce your burnout, because awareness precedes action. So if I'm feeling humiliated, that will kickstart my motivation to eat healthy, have reduced cravings, go to the gym more. It's like when you go to the dentist and you feel numb, then you can't really know where your tongue is. You can't even like taste the food. You can't even eat the food. So there's no point in taking action to eat the food because you're quite numb. So step number 3 is, if you still feel quite mentally burnt out after recognizing that emotion, is to start using coping mechanisms. So I have a free coping mechanisms ebook in the link in the description, which is completely free, and there's tons of coping mechanisms. I think there's 100, which are all separated into different categories, which is tailored for you. So download that whenever you're feeling emotionally or drained or mentally burnt out. Use those, and then you'll see that your emotions will start to pick up, your mood will start to pick up. So once you start to implement these coping mechanisms and recognize these emotions, you'll find that your cravings in the evenings will be much less. So in summary, the 3 main reasons why you're not feeling full after eating is probably under eating, probably you're eating for psychological hunger, and number 3 is you're mentally burnt out and you're eating for dopamine. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and comment below what's the reason why you don't feel full after eating all the time, and check the link in the description on the many ways I can help you and all my freebies, from my binge eating masterclass webinar, my emotional eating quiz, my one-to-ones, my online course, and many more. And check this video out because I highly recommend it, and I'll see you in that video.